Sounds good to me. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Gary.
Let's see where we're at today. I tried to get some light in the room here. It's so darn dark here in Cleveland. We've got about an inch of rain and we're expecting 7 inches of snow tomorrow. So we're kind of hunkered down. So whatever. Not that big a deal. All right, let's get into this. We got some interesting things to discuss, I think, today as usual, and we'll see what's going on. Nathaniel, a question from you. If you've heard from Bob Inderbitson, because I've not heard back from Bart. I tried pinging him again late last week.
You know, I have not heard from, I saw Bob Inderbitson on Telecon on Tuesday night, and I advertised the Hamsci workshop and the SEQP, but I didn't get a chance to talk to him about ARRL sponsorship. So,
Nathaniel, I saw him last Wednesday because I'm on the PR committee.
Okay.
And I mean, I did not bring it up because I didn't want to step on toes, but I know he's really busy because the board meeting is this week, I think, or this coming weekend. Okay. So if he hasn't gotten back, that's probably the same thing with Bart as well, Gary. Okay. But if you need me to do anything, because I mean, obviously we talk pretty much every week, you know, from a committee standpoint, I can help you out with that.
Since you are considered an official ARRL volunteer, right?
Yeah, I'm worth 100 points, I think.
You're worth 100 points. That's great. Yes, you're worth 100 points. Since you are an official member of the ARRL PR committee, why don't we ask you formally, would the ARRL be interested in doing this sponsorship of the SEQP? And then you can go relay that message to whoever you need to relay it to.
Great, perfect. So yeah, and I know obviously Dave NA2AA as well, so because he was a member of the club. So I can reach out to him too if we don't get any satisfaction. I think we will. So I'll pick up the ball. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Good. That would be very helpful. Thanks, Ed. Hope your nephew's doing well too.
A little bit better, a little mixed bag, but
okay.
Generally better. So thanks.
Good. All right. We had Nathaniel put some feelers out for the citizen science, I guess group or organization that's part of NASA. And we got some information back from as Mark Kuchner, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. And he asked me if I would write something up for that they could post on the not probably word for word, but either on their citizen science website, which looks like this. Let me see if I can find it, and or start promoting Hamsci and the Eclipse events on their social media channels. Mm-hmm. I think that's certainly a good thing, but I'm getting my feet wet, and I really didn't want to post anything without this group having seen it. So I wonder if you guys wouldn't mind taking a look what I was going to send to him before I send it, and make sure I'm kind of on the right path and not saying anything I shouldn't.
Okay.
So looking at the other postings and stuff, they were fairly informal. They weren't super technical or whatnot. But as I started off, with the 2017 study by U of M, estimating that 215 people observed either in person or virtually the 2013 eclipse. Of course, the vast majority of whom witnessed obscuration in the visible light spectrum. And what I said is that they were joined by a small but dedicated group of citizen scientists far more interested in the obscuration of extreme UV radiation and the subsequent impact on the ionosphere, the ionized region of the atmosphere located between 80 and 1,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface.
Do you have those dates right? The 2013 total solar eclipse?
Yeah, there you go. That's right. There's a typo right there. Thank you.
Yeah. I might start, I might lead with an estimated 215 million people observed and put the 2017 study of, put University of Michigan second. Do your citation. For this, do you have let's see, an estimated 250 million people observed in person or virtually? Hey, Rachel, how are you?
Good.
What's going on?
Oh.
Okay, I've got the Telecon. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I just meant to be able to.
Okay. An estimated 250 million people observed in person or virtually the 2017 total solar eclipse. Put the word solar in there.
Yeah, as opposed to lunar, yes.
Yes. Over North America, the vast majority of whom witnessed obscuration in the visible light spectrum. They were joined by a small but dedicated group of citizen scientists far more interested in the obscuration of the extreme UV radiation and the subsequent impact on the ionosphere, the ionized region of the atmosphere located between, should put about 80 and 100. So between about.
I would take the word spectrum out of the early part of the sentence. They observed the obscuration in visible light. Spectrum seems to mean that they had spectroscopes. They didn't.
Yeah. And if you want to, in this case, if you want to cite the source for your estimated 215 million people, you can probably do a hyperlink to the University of Michigan study.
Mm.
So that way,
that's right.
They get credit, but that way, because the news articles that go on this website are a little bit more, they're a little more kind of like popular science style and a little less academic citation style. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that later. Yep. Okay.
And editing, you'll want to take out the third word minor, but just an estimated 215, not an estimated that.
Good. Yep. Thanks, Ron.
All right, so let's start with the top. An estimated 215 million people observed in person or virtually the 2017 total solar eclipse over North America, the vast majority of whom witnessed obscuration in visible light. They were joined by a small but dedicated group of citizen scientists far more interested in the obscuration of extreme UV radiation and the subsequent impact on the ionosphere, the ionized region of the atmosphere located between about 80 and 1,000 kilometers. You could put a space between 1,000 and kilometers above the Earth's surface. These observers belong to HAMSI, the Ham Radio Science Citizen Investigation, not Initiative.
Yep.
They will again be active during the 2023 annular and 2024 total solar eclipses, both of which will transit across large swaths of the continental US. The HAMSI members, along with the amateur radio community, you say the greater amateur radio community, because HAMSI is part of the amateur radio community, or like a subset, will be transmitting, receiving, and recording signals on shortwave frequencies before, during, and after each eclipse. I mean, there will be people, going down to 160 meters, right?
Yeah. Okay, we can put 1.8 in there.
Yeah. Post-eclipse studies will focus on modeling and confirmation of theories surrounding atmospheric variability, including specific phenomena such as it should be traveling ionospheric disturbances. But I want to be a little cautious here because traveling ionospheric disturbances connected to eclipses is actually a very controversial topic. Okay, so it's easy to see traveling ionospheric disturbances in the ham radio data, but it's hard to say that those traveling ionospheric disturbances that you see are actually connected to the eclipse. So I would probably avoid that word.
I got a quick question on the frequencies. Is it going to be limited to 6 meters at the high end, or are some people going to be doing higher, for instance, like EME?
That's a good question. I don't think any of our plans include anything higher. right now.
Okay.
The other thing I would say is people might be curious about the other end, and certainly there are people in our community who are very concerned with the lower frequencies. So maybe we can try and be a little bit
yeah, because also there'll be people working down in VLF. I don't know
That's
if
true.
you
We
want to
got the
mention
VLF
any of
actually,
that,
right,
but
right.
what recording signals, what do you just say, across the radio spectrum?
Yeah, there you
that's
go.
a
That's
good
pretty
one.
generic.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because we don't want to offend anyone.
I like that phrase.
I took data at 60 kilohertz on WWVB last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people will be observing like 24 kilohertz NAA.
Yes. So there will be a lot of that. Post-eclipse studies will focus on modeling and confirmation of theories surrounding ionospheric impacts of these eclipses. Now, you have a copy of the NASA grant proposal we wrote, right?
Yeah, I should still have that. Yes.
Okay, so that's a good one to refer back to when you're trying to address like what science questions we're addressing. And I know Nick, I see Nick Hall Patch is on here. He had an email about science questions for the eclipse, so we might be able to address that as well. Why don't you bring that proposal up so we can look at it? And I'm also going to send you a copy of that eclipse, of the CEDAR eclipse proposal for the GRAPE too. That way you can have that. Let's see here. Okay, let's see. So this, if you look in the third paragraph there, this project will study the bottom side ionosphere's response to solar eclipses specifically with the following goals. Assess the accuracy of modeled predictions of the bottom side ionosphere, determine whether or not an onset recovery asymmetry of the bottom side ionosphere occurred during the 2023 and 2024 eclipses, and compare and contrast the effects of the 2023 and 2024 eclipses on radio wave propagation to dawn and dusk gray line conditions. So I think I would, instead of saying traveling ionospheric disturbances, I would come back to those 3 points. And you can paraphrase them somehow, but I think that's safer.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And I just emailed you the CEDAR grant, which is funding the GRAPE 2 project. And you'll see that the objectives are actually very similar for the CEDAR. There's a couple of different ones, but the GRAPE 2 has very similar objectives.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let me take me back and work on that. We can look at this again next week, probably then. That's fine.
Okay, that's great. So a little bit of a word on Mark Kuchner. So he's actually like an official NASA person that is responsible for the citizen science community. So if we got funded for the citizen science proposal that you were just reading, if we get that funding, we would actually be like officially responsible to provide Mark with these updates and things like that. So it's actually a really important thing to do that. Great.
Okay, good. Learn a little bit every day. I like this.
Definitely. Okay, that looks great. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll finish that up next week. I'll let them know that we're working on it and know what's going on.
Great.
We talked a little bit about the Youth on the Air initiative last week, and you suggested that Veronica would be a good potential person to manage that or to handle that. And
Great.
I did send her a note briefly discussing or informing what we were talking about a little bit. And I strongly suggested she look to you for some input and talk to you, because you guys, I think, meet on a regular basis.
Yeah, so we're on break right now. So I haven't heard from her since December, really. But I actually have sent her an email as well. And I also did reach out to Neil as well. Well, actually, he kind of reached out to me because of the Yoda stuff. And I took that opportunity to mention the SEQP. So he did say that he will, it sounds like he will save a spot for us to talk for about it. I don't know, for somewhere between a half hour to an hour during the Yoda event. Who exactly is going to give that talk is still up for discussion. I'm hoping Veronica can actually go to Yoda, and I'm hoping because she's been invited to be one of the leaders for Yoda this year. So I'm hoping she can go there and be there anyway, and then give the talk as part of what she's doing up there. But in the event that she can't go, because I know she's hopefully getting ready for graduate school and things like that, then I could potentially do a Zoom talk, or maybe we have someone else give a talk. The reason I might not be available is I might be in Switzerland for a meeting that week. There's a traveling atmospheric disturbance meeting that week. So I may end up being like double booked. And then in that case, then maybe Gary could give it, or Mary Lou, or someone else on this call could talk about it. So we can see. But I did talk with Neil that he is expecting, I think, some sort of SEQP contribution to the Yoda camp.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, that's in mid-July. Does that ring any bells with you?
Yes, it does. If you Google Youth on the Air, you'll come up with their website, and there's information on that, youthontheair.org. And you can click on camps and then Ottawa 2023.
Yeah.
Right down there, it says July 16th through the 21st.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we've got a couple of things in motion there, so that's good. It helps.
Great.
Yeah, Veronica would be a great one to participate. As I said to her, I said they've probably got enough old retired guys from ham radio that they've heard from. They don't want to hear from another one like me. So, but
that's also the week of the dark moon. So a lot of amateur astronomy thing is happening that week.
Oh wow. What's the dark moon, Mary Lou?
Oh, it's new moon.
Oh, so, the new moon.
New moon. So if you're taking pictures of the sky, the moon won't interfere with them.
Right. That's very good. That sounds good, Gary.
Okay. All right. On our speakers bureau, I haven't done too much. I did hear back from Gareth. He gave me his topic that he would be willing to present on.
Great.
And I haven't done any more to fill out the rest of been working on other things, but I'll fill some of this stuff out so we can get a better idea what this page might look like.
Okay.
And then Ron, I got your 3 up there too, Ron, that we talked about last week. So.
And I have to send you things still. Would you do me a favor? Could you add an L to my last name?
Oh. Yep.
Thank you.
I'm not in edit mode, but I'll make a note.
Yeah, that's okay. That looks really good.
I think sometime we got to get you speaking with Caitlin Frizzell. Have the two Frizzells together, spelled
That'd be
different.
that would be very, very fun. And Rachel could give a talk too. She's still working on her magnetospheric stuff right now. So we could have
We could have all Frizells.
Yeah, we could have a whole Frizzell seminar.
It's kind of like worked all states and be worked all for cells. Does that sound of thing?
That's
Yeah,
right.
something like that.
Something like that.
Some other irons we got in the fire. We've got are a long way out into the future is the CQ and QST articles. One of these when Ward's on, and next time we'll talk about how to get started on those because I know he's got some ideas.
Okay.
And Vicky's still working on our banner. Nothing's due from her for another week or so.
Okay. Once we get that banner, because we don't have anything, we have some of these web pages about the SEQP on our site, but none of them are linked from the front page or from anywhere, right?
Right.
So I guess that we're gonna wait until we have that banner in hand, and then we figure out how we link everything together.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
That sounds great. Let's go back to Ed. Let's go to Ed, and then I want to talk about to Nick Hall Patch there. Ed, I did send Bob Inderbitz an email inviting him and the ARRL to the HamSci workshop about a week or so ago. I haven't heard back from him on that either. So I wonder if ARRL would like to have some sort of official presence at the HamSci workshop.
Okay.
And if so, I could probably fund at least one person to come.
Okay. Done. I'll bring it up with him. Yeah.
And certainly, like the ARRL, they could have a table if they like.
Okay. Yeah, and I think yeah, I know in terms of staffing, off the record, I know they hired a PR person. So that might be a real good first opportunity. Okay.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah. So that's good. Hey, because he's got a pair of hands that can help him. So that'd be good.
That would be really, really good.
Done. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And great. Why don't we go into Nick Hall Patch? Because Nick, you sent me some emails about scientific questions.
Yeah. Am I coming through?
Yes, you are coming through. We just see the top half of your head.
There we go. Yeah. All right. Oh my gosh. There's all sorts of interesting things happening in the top.
What's that like? I see all these. It almost looks like old TV going on with your.
Yeah, no, it's seeing everything else that's happening here. You know, like there's other individuals that are on this call are
living test pad
across the top. There we go. Beats me what's going on.
I wasn't sure if that was some sort of like Zoom filter or if that was some other.
Yeah, it's a TV test pattern. Okay, so yeah, I don't know quite where you want to start on this, you know, because when you made the reply to my initial question about, you know, whether you want to have medium wave DXers participating in this, you sort of threw, you know, it seemed to me that there was the scientific question was, you know, sort of put back in my lap a little bit as if I had some idea of what we as medium wave DXers wanted to find out. Whereas really what's happening is that during the eclipse, there will be medium wave DXers recording, you know, like what's going on during the eclipse for their own interests. And, and you know, like if that data can be put to use for what HamSci is investigating, in other words, the scientific investigations, then I'd be happy to, you know, sort of herd the cats and get that data. But it's not as if I, you know, am a scientist. I'm a technician. You know, so I don't have a clear idea of what would be useful as far as you know, HamSci is concerned in the investigations and so forth. I'm just saying that there's going to be a whole pile of data available, and it could either be like last time where you go in after the fact and say, what do you got, guys? Or you could sort of say ahead of time, this is what these people are looking for. This is the sort of instrumentation that would be really helpful to use instead of, you know, an SDR that you just fired up that's now drifting all across, you know, sort of 3 kilohertz or something like that until it warms up. You know, like, you know, we could plan ahead on this. So really, you know, that in that respect, I sort of want to know what you would be interested in so that I could make suggestions as to how people could approach this. Because I think a number of the DXers would be interested in helping out. It's just simply that they need to know how best to do that. You know, I rather like what I said earlier about the, you know, the HARP experiment. You know, I said demodulated, you know, they need demodulated recordings. They didn't say what sort of demodulated recordings, you know, is that science, or is it just sort of, you know, making people feel like they're important? Anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the easiest way to integrate it into kind of what we're doing is we have a couple of grant proposals already written. One is funded and a couple are pending. And each of those grant proposals have some scientific questions in them already. And they may or may, some of them are using more HF techniques, some of them are using VLF techniques. So, you know, medium wave is kind of in the middle there. But one thing to do would be to start with those proposals. We can look at the science questions in there and see how the data that you're collecting might help to answer those questions that we're already asking.
Yeah, and you know, essentially, you know, I'm not looking for things to do. It's simply that there will be
you're a data collector. You're doing this.
That people will be doing that anyway, and it'd be better to have it focused. You know, rather than say, oh, gee, if we'd only done it this way, we would have actually had some worthwhile data here.
So let me put a bug into maybe Gary's ear and some of the other people's ears here too. One of the challenges with doing the citizen science project is you always have to have people who can actually analyze the data and actually do something with it. And ham radio operators tend to be very good at collecting the data, but we really need people to look at it too. And right now, that responsibility primarily falls on people like me and the other people who are students or postdocs or people like that who are funded by the grants. So if the NASA SEQP proposal were to get funded, that would hire a postdoc who would be responsible for trying to analyze all the data in the way that we've already planned in this grant. Okay, so just so you know, so there's kind of there's a data analysis plan already in place based on these proposals. And I'll be happy to send you these project descriptions so you can see like what's planned and how it's worked out. But at the same time, there's way more questions and there's way more work than any one postdoc or handful of professors can do. And part of the citizen science project is trying to encourage people not only to collect the data, but also maybe to help participate in the analysis process. And so I guess my question to you and, you know, to Gary and, you know, if we're going to really make HamSci like a citizen science project, how do we also identify those people who want to do that analysis and can, you know, in different ways? So.
Yeah. You know, certainly, you know, like I'm not so sure that there would be a large number of people. Well, first of all, a large number of people who participate in it, but second of all, a large number of people who would have the capability or the interest. For me personally, I'd be happy to learn something new. You know, I've done a little bit of, you know, sort of simple processing myself, but it's
but I think
I see your point about, you know, like what you're trying to do is, you know, sort of aim for certain, you know, sort of scientific findings, and you know, that you would want whatever is being gathered to fit into that. But as I say, I'm thinking more that the data will be gathered anyway. It's more a matter of gathering it in such a way that it could be usefully processed, rather than spending all your time compensating for the fact that you didn't gather it properly in the first place.
Right. Well, that's where if you're able to start with some scientific questions, some things that you know that you're asking for, then that helps you to know how you want to collect it or how you want to process it.
Correct, but I don't know, you know, certainly if there's going to be, it has to be collected on this sort of, you know, this sort of instrumentation has to be collected in this sort of format and so forth. As I say, it's hurting cats for these people.
It is.
I don't think that you're going to get a high level of participation under those circumstances.
Right.
I might be surprised, but it's, you know, because it's just that they will be approaching it from the point of view of they're doing what they're doing. They're happy to help other people out, but they're not going to essentially make it a ham side project.
Right.
They will make their personal project dovetail with the ham side project.
So if let's say you have someone that was making these recordings anyway, and they just you wanted general format that was going to be potentially useful, maybe useful in the future. I would say at minimum what you want to do is you'd want to have the recording. You'd probably want to do a recording with the radio with the AGC turned off.
These are SDR recordings. These are
but even SDRs
AGC.
could have AGCs.
Sorry?
Even SDRs could have AGCs.
They could, and that would be one of the things that you would want to nail down as to what would be useful. You know, there's one particular relatively inexpensive SDR that has an RF AGC that's practically invisible to the user, and certainly to the, you know, like the quality. You don't know what's going on there at all. You just know that you're not getting overload, and that's all that the user cares about. But it doesn't produce useful data for anything other than saying, I heard this station or whatever. So yeah, no, you're certainly right about that. But most of the earlier SDRs, and you know, really, I can only think of one that's using this. Sorry.
Why don't we take a step back for a minute? Let's talk about one science question that we are asking in both the GRAPE and the SEQP proposal. And I saw that you cited the Ruth Bamford report.
So, yes.
Okay. So in that report, they addressed the same question. And the idea is, it's basically, I think the way Ruth Bamford talked about it was, what point in the ionosphere is actually controlling where the changes happen? So does the person notice see the eclipse effects when the eclipse is directly overhead? Do they see the eclipse effects when the totality is between the transmitter and the receiver, like at the midpoint? Do they see the eclipse effects when totality is over the transmitter? So like there are different points, and you would think that it would be, the biggest effect would be when the totality is happening right at the midpoint between the transmitter and the receiver. But I think if you read what Ruth Bamford wrote in her report, she found that not to be true.
And in fact, the report that I wrote about the stuff in 2017, you know, addressed some of the stuff that, you know, that Ruth Bamford was talking about and verified some of it, and some of it wasn't verified, but then she had some findings there that actually conflicted with each other as well.
So that's probably a good place to start. You know, if you're gonna say what, like I think that's a really kind of quote unquote easy question to ask, and I think it's one that people could understand pretty easily. So if you had people, you know, have that question in their head and then record the data in such a way that it helps to address that particular question, I think that would be useful.
Yeah, I guess that what you know, even from the last time that this was run, and it was run after the fact using found data essentially, was that the recordings were done in such a way that there was, you know, like they were pretty raw. You know, they were essentially, you know, like a broadband recording from a broadband antenna, and you know, so you could do whatever you wanted with the data.
Yes.
Except, you know, one thing that we did discuss earlier was whether or not there were any frequency shifts occurring in that data. And that was impossible to find that out because all the SDRs in question drifted, you know, far too much to be able to see any frequency drifts. And, you know, if you wanted to find out something about frequency drifts, then definitely, or, you know, like frequency shifts due to the eclipse, you would definitely want to, you know, make sure that you would favor those SDRs that had, you know, sort of locked clocks, you know, so that any shift you saw was due to, you know, what was going on in the ionosphere rather than what was going on in the receiver.
Right.
But everything else, yeah, I'm struggling to sort of find out, you know, what they could do wrong, you know, in terms of just presenting this big glom of raw data. We're talking gigabytes of raw data.
Well, things that they could do wrong is they could not state the latitude and longitude of where they're located.
Correct, but we had all those details last time, and that was just a simple question, you know.
Right. I'm just going through my head. So there's that. There's not properly time stamping the recording. There's not including the frequency information. So you need to know, depending on how, if you're storing the IQ, when SDRs store IQ data, they normally just save a certain amount of bandwidth of IQ data, but they don't necessarily write down what the center frequency is.
Okay. Yep.
And so if you don't have that center frequency, then that's kind of useless.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you have at minimum the location, if you have the IQ data, the sample rate, so you need to know what the sample rate is of the IQ data. You need to know the center frequency. You need to know the timestamp. If you have at minimum that, I think you have at minimum what you need to potentially do something useful.
Yeah. And as I say, I mean, those were all derived, you know, last time from the found data. And, you know, but you know, having a list of, you know, like what would make the data most useful, I guess, you know, I'm just really repeating myself. You know, if you can sort of say, as far as HAMSI is concerned, we'd really like to see data that had this information associated with it, or had this stability associated with it, or whatever.
So I mean, I can write that. I can write that down right now and send it back to you in the email, and we can.
That would be great. You know, it's just you know, as long as we have a sort of starting point. But, you know, like we also need to talk about the science, because again, the stability is something that has changed radically in that, you know, sort of 6 years since 2017.
Right. So minimum requirements for useful data. Okay. So you need location, lat, lon. Good time stamping. You need, let's see. So we'll probably went to assume IQ from SDR. So we're assuming IQ data from an SDR receiver.
Correct.
Okay. So we're assuming that they need to know the location, lat long, good time stamping. You want to have know what the center frequency is, the sample rate. I would say that is probably the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to add anything else for again, bare minimum. If you know that, you know when the thing happened, you know where it happened, you can know what frequency it happened at.
Mm-hmm.
How about signal strength?
You'll get that. You'll be able to get that from the signal itself. Well, you'll be able to get the a relative signal to noise ratio.
Yeah, you'll get relative signal, and that varies radically between SDRs as to how accurate that is.
It is, and if you
Yeah.
have AGC turned on, that's going to be skewed.
Again, depending on how you're deriving, like again, the last time all that stuff was derived from the raw data. There was no demodulation involved. There's no AGC involved.
Right.
That's so.
Right. So my thinking, and David McGaw may know better than me, but my thinking is that with most SDRs, probably if they have a save raw IQ mode, it will just be, it probably won't have the AGC, but there might be something where the radio does have some sort of hardware AGC in
Correct.
front of the software chain. And if that's the case, then you really need to make sure that's disabled. But you want to make sure that any AGC is not affecting this IQ data.
Sure.
So
and also because some of the SDRs, well, almost all of them have switchable attenuation, and not all of them front-end attenuation. Not all of them actually record what that attenuation was. Then you will be, again, if you're looking for more absolute signal levels, that will skew things.
Additional useful metadata.
Obviously, the receiver type. I mean, there's the description of the equipment.
Well, for sure.
Yeah,
a good point.
Which that's what I'm putting down here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, type of receiver, type of antenna, and its orientation, other relevant equipment description.
Sometimes we can use different software with a given SDR, right? So
this is a whole, and this again is where I think you really need to know which software did the initial recording, because a number of different kinds of software will interact with different SDRs.
Right. But a lot of, as long as you have this, there are different types of software that can put this same thing out. It shouldn't matter. One thing that's worth noting is that sometimes some softwares can reverse whether the I is first or the Q is first. So there can be differences there.
Yeah, and actually, to be blunt, there's not a lot of documentation for some of the software, and how there's some outfits that have very, very detailed documentation. There are other outfits that there's some deep thinking going on. I wonder what we did there. But
maybe some of this stuff I should actually put up here: type of receiver, and software. Type of receiver, software version, software title and version used for recording.
One thing I would suggest is there's usually an RF and an IF gain setting on any given receiver, which you would want to report. And you also want to report any preamplifier used.
Yeah, so
RF, IF. Gain.
Yeah, I guess that goes with the front end attenuation, because in fact most of them actually
settings.
Right. It could be attenuation, it could be gain, and then you may be using an external preamplifier.
And not to mention the verbiage that's used. Sometimes gain is actually not gain at all, it's just less attenuation.
This is where I'm a little torn about what is like absolutely required. Like when you say what's the absolute bare minimum.
Yeah.
And what is, you know, what is nice to have. Like, I think you should have all of this, but I still kind of additionally, I'll say it, additionally very useful.
Yeah.
So it's like, I feel like if I had a file, a data file that at least met these specifications, I feel like if I could do something useful with it. Would it be perfect? No. But I feel like I could look at all these collectively, I could do something with it. So that's why this is like bare minimum. And so this is additional, very useful, highly recommended. So then I'll also give you here, I will give you the project descriptions for the two proposals that we have here. I think one, there's a CEDAR Eclipse proposal. And two, where is it? It's still my pending folder. Proposals, pending, SEQP, submitted, project description. Make sure that's the right thing. Yeah, 22 pages. So in each of these documents, right up towards the top, there's going to be a kind of project summary. And you'll see right here, it's got 1, 2, 3. These are kind of the meat and potatoes of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if you go through the document, it does explain them in more detail and gives figures and stuff like that. Yeah. So that's for the SEQP one. And then this is for using the GRAPE. So with the GRAPE one, NSF calls it intellectual merit. So you look under intellectual merit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the 5 questions that the proposal is trying to address.
Okay.
So, and there are scientific objectives, background and objectives. So it goes through it. So I think what I'd say to you is, here's the minimum of what you need for useful data, but then you can also refer to these proposals. You know, if you're trying to figure out, okay, what might people do with these things, or if you're trying to find people who can try to address them, you can give them these proposals and say, here are some questions we're trying to answer.
Yeah. Well, I know. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and so that, and also you can give them the Ruth Bamford report and be like, we want to try and replicate here and see if we can recreate, you know, verify her findings the way you have already done.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that cropped up, you know, in various things that I have read, is that you were going to, or had done also in the past, was somehow compare this with what was happening at sunrise and sunset on similar paths. And, you know, I mean, that could be part of the data gathering. You know, if you have medium wave people who are interested in this, you could sort of say, and bonus points, so to speak, if you could also do, you know, like a dawn and dusk recording of X, you know, maybe there's a period specified somewhere already in your description there. You know, if you could do data files during that time period as well, at your location using the same antenna, same equipment, and so forth. That, you know, the day before, the day after, whatever, you know, those might too be useful, you know, useful pieces of data to have. Okay. Well, I think I might be able to sort of build something on that. You know, I guess too, part of it's going to be that we're still not sure exactly what's being funded. how much, how much gets done if you don't get funded for some of these things.
Yeah.
So it's,
So the grape one is funded.
okay.
So the one that says Cedar Grape,
Yeah.
that is funded. The
Okay.
NASA one is still pending.
Okay. I'd certainly look at the, what's required in the grape one and see if I can winkle out, sort of something that would be similar, or, for a medium wave DX to do, so that we would then have data. And what would be your plan, sort of, if you did have this load of data, what happens to it? Like before, because everything was done after the fact, and in fact, I didn't even submit anything to HAMSci until the work had already been done for the most part.
Well, that's kind of why I was encouraging. So for the things that we actually have proposals written for, we do have a plan, where we have personnel on each proposal that will be analyzing the data.
Okay.
So for the proposals here, there is a plan for collecting the data, and there are people identified or resources identified to hire people to actually analyze the data and do scientific processing. But for something like what you're proposing, we don't have, additional, we can certainly make that data available to the people who are working on these grants, and they are welcome to use that if it helps them, but there's no guarantee that they'll actually have the time to look at it. Because they're already going to be swimming in data and swimming in things that they need to be doing to meet what's actually written here. And so that's what I'm saying. And this is really a question for a bigger HAMSci is, again, as a citizen science organization, how do we, people, a lot of times citizen science is about collecting data, but how do we also get people to look at it? And I know Mary Lou might have some good ideas about this, because the amateur astronomy community is actually quite good at this, and they've been doing this sort of thing for many years. But so maybe they're people to look to. But I think it's a really important question for HAMSci. Not just doing the data collection. How do we get the citizens and the volunteers to also participate in the analysis and the whole scientific process?
Okay.
I think what we've got to do is, just like I recently wrote an article for the CW Ops Bulletin. Of course, I'm biased. I think they're a pretty sharp group of people. Yeah. What the editor asked me, he says, what's your ask? What are you asking of people? I think one of those asks has to be, if you've got skills in this and this and this, let us know so we can pull you in, type of thing.
Right. So, and I think that's
the broader net.
Yeah, and that's a message you can take to your AM listening community, because you're right, maybe most of them are going to be just focused on collecting, but you might have a few people who are actually good or interested in doing the analysis, and it'd be good to identify those people.
Right, yeah. Okay, well, speaking as somebody who doesn't have a background in analysis, but does analysis, you get me, there seem to be some sort of formalities, people, like approaches to take to processing the data and so forth, which, in some cases involves a learning curve. It's not, I'm not sure, especially given that the community is fairly retired, shall we say. I'm not sure how many of them are sort of interested in, starting a new career. But I can certainly ask, see what their background is. Yeah,
exactly. See, feel them out, because if you look at Mary Lou over here, she's a really good data analyst. She's retired, but my gosh.
Well, what we really need is another bunch of people like Bob who are retired statisticians.
Right.
So the fact that there's a lot of retired people in this community is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people retired from like NASA or space people.
Steve Serwin over here too. Steve Serwin collects all his own data, and then he goes and he writes about it. And he just presented at the AGU meeting And so he's another one that I've learned so much from, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that
if I guess though, if that's not being where you came from,
yeah,
it's a fairly
harder.
It's a fairly big hill to go up.
Right. And we're not asking people who, we're not necessarily asking people who haven't done this before to start doing it. But what we're asking is, you know, you have this AM community here. We're asking you to say, okay, if this is something you're interested in, or if this is something
Yes.
you do have a background in,
yeah,
let yourself know.
They're interested in,
you know,
bodies.
we want you to go collect this data, and we will give you an all expense paid trip to the HamSci workshop to go talk about what you did.
And lots of coffee.
Lots of coffee.
Yeah.
Lots of coffee. And and I think, you know, I have hopes. I have ideas. I often think about how to expand HamSci or grow it or help it to sustain. And I do have like things written down where I have dreams of like hiring a project manager or an education outreach person, where their whole job is, you know, an education outreach person, their whole job is helping to develop courses or, you know, online resources to help the greater citizen science community learn how to do the data analysis, learn how to present at the conferences, learn how to, you know, take it that next step beyond just the collection. So I mean, that's something I have ideas, and I have ideas on how to do it, but, you know, just we haven't brought it there yet.
And then you've got people like me who's coming from medicine with an intense interest, and at all these meetings and going back and watching the videos from the HamSci and the different presentations, feels like he's drinking from a fire hose and enjoying it at the same time. So you've got the entire spectrum of people.
All sorts of things.
And you've got people who can speak well and do presentations like Ron can.
We do.
Yeah, you feed them what you want to tell, and then they come out and make a nice presentation.
That's right.
That's a useful skill as well.
That's kind of you. That's very kind of you, Mary Lou.
So I'm gonna say we're getting up to 5 p.m. Eastern here, so I'm gonna have to go. But before I go, does anyone else want a copy of those 2 proposals I just sent out?
Send it to a bunch of us. Yeah.
Yeah. If you put your email here, if you put your email in the chat right now, I will add your email. Mary Lou, I know your email, so you don't have to add it. I can. West. I know. I think I've added. Okay, great. Mary Lou, WX2R @arrl.net. Anyone else need it? We're good.
Steve Serwin's on there too.
Yeah. Serwin. Great. All right, so I will send that off. All right, so I think we'll say 73 for today. Was there anything else, Gary?
No, I just want to let you know I successfully made my hotel reservation at the Lackawanna. So
wonderful. And did you get for the $109 a night rate?
Yeah, the only glitch was the 866 phone number. My phone told me it's a number I can't use. I have no idea what that means. So I called the 570 or whatever it was, and it was a piece of cake.
Okay, maybe I'll try that number later. So yeah, anyone who wants to go to the HamSci workshop, the hotel block is open. So you can go to hamsci.org and click on the workshop website, and you can make your reservations at the Radisson.
I wish. It's going to be virtual for me.
Really? You're right in New Jersey, right?
No, I'm in Utah.
You're in Utah. Yeah.
I'm out west.
Okay.
That's a long ways to pedal my bike.
I was going to say it's a long walk.
A long walk.
Is it more of a funding issue, or is it a time issue?
Oh, all right. Now I'm finally unmuted. It's more of a funding time. I've got enough seniority and time with the other nurses I work with that I think I've got like 2 months of vacation in there, 3 months. So,
okay.
But anyway, it's yeah. Anyway, and you know what? Just this is a good time. I'll be really quick, but I would like to tell this group, I feel like I have grown and learned so much, and that this group has been so incredibly patient with some of my very basic questions. And people are constantly sending me articles to read and to learn. And you know that I'm DXing and awards and involved as officer in quite a few clubs and stuff. But this has truly been just a fascinating journey. And I would just like to take a minute right now and say thanks to everybody, because I'm loving the process. So thank you.
And I'm so glad. And it is, if funding is the issue, I have a good amount of travel funds to give to participants specifically for bringing people here. So I'm looking, like, you're very active in helping to give talks, and you're looking to learn more. So like, you're the type of person that I would be able to fund. So if you are interested in going in person, send me an email and we can, discuss that.
All right, I'll do that offline. Thanks, Nathaniel.
You're welcome. Because my whole goal here is to get everyone together talking, and virtual is wonderful, but it's much, much better when we're in person. So yeah. And same, Nick, if you're interested in doing a presentation on the AM Eclipse stuff and coming to talk to people about that in person, you should also consider coming down.
Okay, I will look at it. It's just at the moment, I just feel that because there's a certain vagueness in, well, maybe after I've read what you've submitted and so forth, sent to me, I will have a clearer idea of exactly where we're going. But anyway, I will take a look at it. Thanks.
You're welcome. And remember, coming to this workshop, one of the advantages of coming to it is you get to spend some nice time and meals and networking. So when you're like, I don't understand this is a great time to, there's going to be a lot of people there that can help explain things.
Oh, yeah. No, I know entirely what you're talking about, in terms of the sort of one-to-one and groups, just building on top of other people's knowledge. Too many email communications that take forever to finish up, which can sometimes be done in a few minutes when you've got a group of people working on a problem.
Definitely. All right, everyone. Thank you so much.
All right.
Okay, everyone. Take care. See you next week.
Okay.
Bye.
73,
everybody.
73.
Bye now.